Thank you for coming. We'll call the meeting to order. First thing, could I have a motion to, when Paul gets on, Paul Rosenbaum would like to be on phone conference with us. Could I have a motion, please, Rob, in a second? Okay, Brandy, second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Paul, I don't know, is he on yet? Yep. Okay, welcome, Paul. Okay, order of business, approval of the minutes from January 24th, 2022. A motion, please. Rachel, thank you. Eden, you always get a hand up, thank you. Okay, any comments, questions, additions to the minutes? Thank you, Mr. Rand, for coming. If not, please vote aye for those in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, informational items. First thing we have, is Julie happen to be here? Oh, Heather's going to give it. Good. This is going to be on the accounts payable review. It was furnished in our packet. Anyone have any questions, or you want to go? Heather, we'll let you make the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to remind everyone that we didn't have financials this month. We will have period 13 for 2021 next month and January 2022 for next month also. I also wanted to note that we have made a couple adjustments in our accounts payable process, which seem to have streamlined the workload on the staff, as well as recognizing improvement in the way that things are coded. It gives a faster, gives people a little more time to respond to questions that we have. And so that seems to be really improving. I just wanted to call that out.
Okay, on this audit of the accounts payable, did you find any exceptions of rules or anything? Was there anything noted?
Not this time around, no, sir.
Okay, thank you. So then also, as long as I got you here, I'll ask you about the audit process. How's that? Is that completed yet or still in process?
It's still in process. I believe early April we'll reconnect with the auditors again. We're still providing information to them and having more of a conversation virtually than anything in person yet. So, but everything seems to be going well and we're on track.
Anyone have any questions for Heather? Comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move along to the Headington Oaks financial report. Paul, welcome back. Hope you're feeling better.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.
These are the partial financials for December 2021. These would have typically been presented at the last committee meeting, but I was unable to due to the bout with COVID. So as Heather mentioned, we'll have the full report on December and period 13 at the next committee meetings as well as January. Be happy to try and answer any questions anyone may have on these period 12 financials.
Any questions for Paul? We're making it easy on you today, Paul. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Scott. No, we got Shauna, excuse me. The Headington Oaks financial plan update.
I'm getting all choked up over it, you guys.
Oh, I guess.
Just so excited.
Yeah.
As Paul said, these numbers in the financial plan represent through December 31st and do not include period 13. So we hope to have those final numbers next month, as well as I know Jenny and her team are working diligently, and we hope to have some good news for you regarding some of those cases next month as well.
So no real breakthroughs yet.
Yeah, but we're this close.
Okay, that's what we want to hear. Okay, all right, thank you. Anybody have questions for Shauna? Thank you. Okay, Scott, legislative update. Anything there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Senate's not in session this week, but the House is. Friday is the deadline for third reading of bills originating in the House, with any chance of getting out of the House and over to the Senate side. We provided you in last Friday's weekly update 2 documents that summarize some of and many of the bills that we're tracking, but also Anderson Legislative Consulting is tracking an exhaustive list of other bills that could impact us as well. Other than that, nothing to specifically report on legislative right now.
Okay, any comments on legislative affairs? Okay. A resolution, our first resolution, Heather will present that. It's a resolution on the refinance of county nursing home bonds.
Today we seek, is this on? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We seek approval of an ordinance authorizing the sale of refunding bonds as tax exempt. This request is for the county's 2011 bonds related to Headington Oaks.
Let me interrupt just a minute because I didn't put a motion to put this on the floor.
So move.
Thank you, Phil. And a second? Thank you, Eden Blair. Okay, now go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We seek approval of an ordinance authorizing the sale of refunding bonds as tax exempt. This request is for the county's 2011 bonds related to Headington Oaks. The county previously adopted an authorizing ordinance in July 2020 to allow refunds of the bonds as taxable. The ordinance requested today would authorize the county to sell to a buyer that would qualify as tax exempt. The ordinance requested selling the bonds as tax exempt would allow the county to refund the bonds at a lower interest rate than through a taxable refunding. This ordinance would be valid for 3 years from the date of adoption and would provide the county time to close a sale and strategically refinance the debt, lowering the overall amount of interest paid on the bonds.
Yeah, and hopefully we will get a favorable rate. Any comments, discussion on the refinancing? Yes, Kate.
I guess just out of curiosity, we're voting on this first.
Yes.
If we don't vote to sell, how does this?
Well, we'll still refinance. We'll figure out. a
Okay,
way.
that's what I just want to wonder.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, please, oh, I can't, please vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed, nay? Motion carried. Thank you. Second resolution, I need a motion on it for the sale of the county nursing home. Betty, thank you. And Rachel. Okay, Scott's going to give this presentation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of you should have received, obviously, the packet, but also the confidential memo that went out a couple of weeks ago, or about 3 weeks ago, that kind of summarized all the issues. The purpose of this here, short slide deck, is to summarize what's in the agenda briefing and to also summarize the actionable items that are in the resolution that are under your consideration today. Over a year ago, when after we had closed the facility and we had started the process to sell the facility, you gave staff 3 clear policy directives. 1, get maximum sale price. 2, maximize the amount of down payment we can put on refinancing or refunding the bonds. And 3rd, if everything works out, hopefully the buyer would be a community partner. As it relates to maximizing the sale price, if you recall, you awarded a contract through an RFP process to a commercial real estate brokerage firm that specializes in healthcare real estate. As we allowed the agreement that's or the actionable items that are before you today to play out, we were in regular communication with that broker. They provided a significant amount of industry information to us, but with their knowledge and consent, we never did execute that contract as we allowed the process with Methodist Medical Center of Illinois to play out or not. Had it not played out, we most likely would have then executed that contract. The information that they shared with us was twofold, both in the form of just a basic commercial real estate transaction for an empty building and a commercial real estate transaction for a healthcare facility. And in both of those cases, they made it very, very clear to us that the maximum price that we could expect to receive was in the neighborhood of $3 million. After talking with many of you individually and knowing that that was not acceptable on an individual basis, not to say that you as a majority of you might have voted for that in an open session, but privately as individuals you shared that that was an unacceptable sale price. So we continue to work forward. What we have recommended to you now is a sale price that, depending on federal or state grant awards, will be either $8 million, $9 million, or $10 million. Maximizing the bond's cash deposit. So as we laid out for you in prior communications, municipal bonds are different than the mortgage or the car loan that we may or may not have on our homes and our vehicles. We are not allowed to make extra payments if we have extra cash. We're not allowed to pay them off early. If we're in the middle of the term, we're allowed to pay them off at term, or if there's a balance remaining over a multi-decade issuance, about once every 10 years we could refinance, which is what we're doing at this point in time. What is recommended is that we take the sale proceeds plus $7.5 million from the unrestricted portion of the general fund reserves and apply that to the outstanding principal, which over the last 2 years we've started to pay down the principal, and so the outstanding principal right now is roughly $37.5 million. If we're able to apply the sale proceeds plus that $7.5 million, then we'll be in a position where we would be able to refinance the remaining principal for somewhere between 19 and 21 years. It'll depend on the rates at the time that we're able to lock those in. We are not going to be able to lock in rates before the Fed has their first meeting, which will be the week after the March 10th County Board meeting on the 15th and 16th of March. I think it's widely expected the Fed will raise rates either 1/4 or 0.5%, but that's what the conjecture is. That's not fact today. But even raising it 0.5% at that point in time, the financial advisors still expect that we should be able to have a term of somewhere between 19 and 21 years. 19 years is specific in that that's the remaining term on the original bonds that we're looking to refinance. So best case scenario, we keep the original term of the bonds that were issued in 2011. Worst case scenario, we go a year or two beyond that. By comparison perspective, if we were to, as Ms. Pastucha asked about a couple minutes ago, if we were to not sell the facility based on the resolution that's before you, and we were only going to make a $1 million contribution or down payment on the principal, the term would need to be 40 years for the nursing home levy to cover the debt service, and that additional 20-year term would also bring an extra $19 million roughly in interest costs to the taxpayers. So the proposal and the recommendation before you allows you to have the bonds for roughly the minimum amount of time possible at this point, and to incur that interest savings to the taxpayers. The general fund is recommended because guidance from the U.S. Treasury is very clear in that ARPA funds cannot be used for debt service or bond issuance costs in any way, shape, or form. We confirmed this with our bond counsel and asked them if there was any form of creative government accounting that could be done to get around that, and their response was no, there is not. Third objective for us was to find a community partner, and we've done that in Methodist Medical Center of Illinois. They're, as reported in the media, they're going through the process of transitioning from an affiliation with Unity Point Health of Iowa to Carle Health of Champaign-Urbana. Their proposed use of the facility will be very transformative, and it'll be focused on behavioral health for children and adolescents. Over the course of the conversations, Chairman Rand, Vice Chairman Fennell, and Ms. Williams and myself had multiple meetings with the MMCI leadership team, and were briefed on what their plans are. And I think transformative is not only a good descriptor, but maybe even an understatement of how they plan to deliver behavioral health services to that part of our community going forward. So the resolution before you does 5 specific things. The first one it does is authorize the county administrator to take up and resolve any of the remaining due diligence items that are out there, and there are a few. The second thing that it does is it authorizes the county board chairman or the county administrator to execute any and all documents and deeds related to the purchase of 0.93 acres of land from the city of West Peoria. That is the southwest corner of the property. When we acquired the property, West Peoria was integral in the deal, in that they had to provide, or they provided land to the Baptist church that was occupying the property at time of original purchase by us back in 2010, 2011. The purchase price that we're incurring for this is the original price that West Peoria bought it from us. So there's been no inflationary indicator or inflationary increase in the property value for as far as West Peoria is concerned. The third actionable item within the resolution authorizes the board chairman or the county administrator to execute all the documents and deeds related to the sale of the full property, the land and the buildings to Methodist Medical Center of Methodist Medical Center of Illinois. Next, there's an appropriation from the unrestricted portion of the general fund reserves for that $41,000 to go to the city of West Peoria for the acquisition of that 0.93 acres. And then lastly, there's an appropriation of $17.5 million to go towards the refunding or refinancing of the outstanding nursing home bonds. That, Mr. Chairman, is a very high-level summary of where we've been, where we've got to at this point, and what the recommendation is before you today. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. That's pretty complete. Anyone have some questions of Scott? Rob.
Thank you. I guess I'm struggling with the sale price. I just can't imagine that the value of that building is at most $10,000 or $10 million. So I guess I just have some questions as far as what's our insurance replacement on that building? What do we hold it as?
So it's been going through a depreciation process from the original construction cost, which was approximately $43 million when we opened in 2012. That was originally depreciated over a 30-year period, so you take that number divided by 30, and that's how much we've been depreciating the value of it each year since then. So that's roughly 10, 11 years. That's a little over $1 million a year in terms of depreciation value. That really, from a financial and auditing standpoint, is the number. So that means that, and that includes all the contents as well. So that would mean that we would be seeing a depreciated value today. And I don't have it in front of me, Mr. Rennell, but just back of the neck and math, that would be roughly in the $30 million range. If my mental math while I'm talking is halfway accurate. That is what it is, and did I want to bring a recommendation to you that had a significantly larger number? Absolutely. But this is the commercial real estate broker was very clear in their expectation setting. The recommendation before you is 3 times, 2.5 to 3 times that, depending on what the final number is from the state or federal grants, and based on what other counties have sold their nursing homes for, which at those facilities were still operational, so there were payer sources which made them more attractive. We're on a cost per bed, we're at least 4 times higher than what they received. And that includes a public bidding process in Champaign County and a process similar to what we went through in Rock Island County and Stevenson County.
Were those nursing homes as new as ours?
One was.
One of them was, yes.
And did we receive anything as far as the $3 million value that was assessed? Did they provide any documentation that we can look at to see how they arrived at $3 million?
Yes, they provided examples of sales that they were the broker for to staff and to outside counsel. So I saw a report that showed all the sales that they had been party to, and $3 million was at the top end of what was on that report.
And then lastly, if we refinance the bonds after it's sold, there's no longer collateral on those bonds. So are we paying a higher rate because there's no collateral?
The collateral is actually the full weight and force of Peoria County government. The building itself was never collateral against the bonds. We are going to get a better rate because we're going down the tax exempt route versus a taxable bond. In 2020, as Heather alluded to in her summary, you had approved an authorizing ordinance for a taxable bond, which would have permitted you to sell the building to a for-profit entity. The recommendation before you is for a not-for-profit entity, and therefore the refinancing has to be in a tax-exempt status. Typically, I think the savings between tax-exempt and taxable could be as much as a 0.5%. It'll vary because there'll be multiple coupons that'll be issued as part of this bond refinancing.
And then I guess just my last comment is I'm not real comfortable with the fact that once this resolution passes, that's the last we hear of it, that the sale is done, that we don't get any details of the sale. And I know in the past I've made comments about how we utilize the basement right now to store a lot of records. When Methodist was here, they said that the building is oversized for what they need. We would have to move those records and rent a place to store these records. So I would like to see something in there that maybe we rent that space for $1 a year while we still have bonds, so that we can still maintain our records there, or just get creative with it. If we are taking a bath to this magnitude on this sale, I would like us to get creative and get something more out of it.
That's one of the items on the list of due diligence things that we still need to resolve.
Good comments, Rob. Thank you. Eden?
Are we selling any or all of the contents inside? Clearly not the storage stuff stored there.
Correct. That is also on the list of due diligence items to be resolved as well. As an example, we have no use for wheelchairs anymore unless the sheriff may need a couple, but not several hundred at the jail, or the JDC might. Their odds are, for their proposed use, they're not going to need any wheelchairs, but they may be interested in buying them for any one of their hospitals. And so, that's a discussion that still needs to be had.
Since there is more to be discussed. Can you tell us exactly what this vote today is saying?
So what the vote does really is so there is a draft purchase agreement that is floating around the attorneys, but what the vote does today is it forwards onto the county board, and then the county board will have the full decision, obviously. But it appropriates the spending authority to put money towards refinancing the bonds, and it puts money towards acquiring that 0.93 acres from West Peoria. What it also does is it signals that that you are prepared to enter into the purchase agreement with Methodist Medical Center of Illinois for, again, depending on the outstanding value of state or federal grants, that could be a purchase price of $8 million, $9 million, or $10 million.
Any other questions? Yes, Kate?
What is the square footage of Headington Oaks?
It's a little over, or roughly around, I think, 88,000 or thereabouts.
And the project, if Unity Point were to build new for this project that they initially proposed, what was their square footage needs for that?
I don't have that number. I have cost estimates of what they were looking to invest, and they'll be making a sizable investment in remodeling the facility after purchase, because state regulatory requirements for behavioral health are going to mandate some changes to the facility. One very easy and visible example to show is that entire building currently has drop ceilings. Drop ceilings are a ligature risk in behavioral health settings, so they'll be removing those and installing hard ceilings.
I guess if you could just give me a rough estimate, how much oversized is Headington Oaks for what Unity Point needs?
Initially, they're going to, I believe they're going to use more than half the space, but they've got ideas and plans to eventually use all of it. It just won't be immediately, though.
Was this ever looked into? One of the things I'm concerned about is that it takes Headington Oaks completely off the table as far as an option for putting a future health department campus. So I guess what I'm wondering is, has it ever been looked into to just selling a portion of that building to Unity Point and then using the other part of it for a health department campus?
So we followed the initial direction, which was to dispose of the entire facility, not part of it. So that specifically was not evaluated. That said, Methodist's proposed initial use is of a large enough percentage of the building that the health department campus, as has been proposed, would not fit in the remaining square footage.
Mr. Rand?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. When we voted 18-0 to exit the skilled nursing business, I don't think we could have envisioned what the net proceeds might be for the asset that we had spent 8 or 9 years using, and probably 15 years developing conceptually to replace the one on Farmington Road. The name escapes me. Bellwood. So I accept the fact that this is a bitter pill, and it's been a bitter pill for me. Most recently, my conversation with Scott is, how is this the best last possibility? And the truth is, since we voted to divest ourselves of the enterprise, we didn't make any evaluation at that time as to what it might cost us in terms of the disposal cost of the asset. What we voted to do was to stop the $2 to $3 million a year of bleeding that we were experiencing. So the opportunity cost for that decision is a negative $2 or $3 million if we remained in the business, plus. And I don't think even today, and looking back at the factors that led up to all of us, at least those that were here at the time, making the decision to say goodbye to Headington, I don't think we would have ever imagined we'd be standing around with a $30 million asset and a $10 million offer. I think what's fortunate is that we're able to come up with some money out of general fund to buy down some of the debt, and that we can contain the cash flow within inside the authorized 6 cents. I think that's probably, in my mind, something that makes this sort of a neutral flavor, cash flow wise. But it's extremely difficult, and I think some of these questions, they are spot on. I mean, why not? What the decision today is about is this particular question of these 5 conditions that Scott is seeking permission to do to proceed on a path to finally make this go away. Some of my colleagues on the county board would say, well, it really doesn't go away as long as you're levying that 6 cents to make your part of the refinance bond debt go away. It is what it is, and it is a very difficult decision for all of us. And I, of all the people with some sort of financial tickling to myself, have just been challenged by how little money we're actually able to get for such a nice building, and because it really, really is a nice building. So what we are doing, purposefully but perhaps inadvertently, is we are investing in the community care for behavioral health that is so incredibly underserved, not only in our state or our country, but right here in our local community. And I think we should be somewhat happy that Methodist Unity Point wants to expand their practice of behavioral health for pediatric and adolescent cases, and that they want to do it right here. And I think that's one of the upsides, and there's no way that we can value that. We can't put a $30 million value on that. We can't put a 6 cent value on it. But we do know that the purpose it's going to is a healthcare purpose by a nonprofit enterprise, and that is the silver lining in the cloud, if you will. So I just wanted to frame this a little bit for everyone who perhaps forgets the road we've been on when we made that decision to stop the red ink, exit the business. We didn't know what we would be able to get for this, but the turnaround is we're going to help subsidize behavioral health in our community. And while not a core mission of our business, neither was Bellwood or Headington, but that's the decision point we're at. Thank you.
I think it's a good summary of what you give a little history where we're at. What we saved in closing the facility, like you said, $2 million, and then at a growing number each year. We also did not have the debt to pay off the complete debt, which we would have had to refinance if we were still going. We would have had to refinance, and that would have been another $19 million to cover all the bonds. So we have savings there. Plus, we have Methodist who's given us the core amount of $8 to $10 million. Then also the amount of money that they're putting into it for close to $15 million of reconstruction money into that facility makes it a little bit, at least it's keeping it in the community. We're going to have some jobs that's going to be doing that. It's a community thing. It's, as Andrew talked about, the people in our community that are going to be serviced by that facility, not through us, but at least someone is going to still be getting service through it. So it is a bitter pill to swallow, but I think it's best that we're going to be able to do. Any other comments, Kate?
I guess I haven't heard anything recently about West Peoria and their acceptance of this.
So the council was informed in a closed session prior to this, once it became public. So there is no pushback from the council. They're appreciative. Originally, the plan on the acreage was to build a new city hall. when this was done, and they traded a church that they owned, plus gave cash. It was originally going to be an $80-some thousand investment, but they were going to get 2 acres, and then we negotiated it down because they got 1 acre. This became public on Friday when it was introduced. So I've told Andrew, and I've told Dr. Knapp, and I've told Scott from day one, I always needed about a 48-hour advance window so that I didn't catch some neighbors off guard. The immediate neighborhood by it is excited about the opportunity. Mind you, it's been vacant for 18 months now, roughly. I called the sisters at the Franciscan house across the street, which this was originally St. Joseph's home. They were ecstatic of the use of this property. From talking to Sister Irene, that this mission for that property has always been better Peoria, and that continues that. So I talked to people even this weekend in the neighborhood, and it's been all positive feedback. And I think that the key behind the positive feedback is everybody knows behavioral health has become such a key issue and a need. You can't turn on the news at night and talking about school-age children needing this help. And the fact, for me, day one, it was always about a community partner, and that Unity Point or Unity Place having this is, I'm not going to have to drive by that and worry about 18-inch tall grass, or if a tree falls down, or if anything. This will be a long-term community anchor in the West Bluff and West Peoria, just like it was intended when it was built as Unity Point. So from the feedback that I've received from city council people I've talked to, the mayor, the administrator, and neighborhood partners, they are glad to see the facility going to a good use, and that it is someone like Unity Place that is located in Peoria, has people that work and live in Peoria. So from that standpoint, I understand the finances that we've all talked about on this horseshoe, but like as Andrew put a good point, Andrew wrapped it up brilliantly, I think, on his points on that. But I'm excited for the future after this happens, and I think West Peoria is excited for the future of knowing what it is, because there's been a lot of uncertainty up there. Thank goodness for the sheriff's department who patrols it, but that's been one of the comments of the facility for the last 18 months. If the sheriffs didn't drive through the back and the front on a nightly basis, there's no activity up there right now. And that's a big facility to have no activity at, especially even though the parking lot's lit. So from the neighbor standpoint, they're happy to see something go in there. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the committee. I was one who cast a vote that I hated to cast, and that was to close the facility, because I knew what we were doing for the people that really needed it. And I did not stand alone and cast that no vote, because I knew that we had to do something that was best for the entire county. And sometimes you have to take a look at the entire county than just your personal beliefs. Is that saying, well, give up your values? No. But I would not want to throw any monkey wrench into the work done by the group that has supported Scott, such as Jim and Sharon and Andrew. So I am going to support this, because it's still going to keep a responsibility to the people of Peoria County in regards to what Methodist wants to do, and that is to create a mental health facility, which is great. The question I have for you, Scott, primarily has to do with the general fund. Now, is this the best way to go, or are you concerned in any way about the use of over $7 million from the general fund?
Great question, Mr. Salzer. As I shared yesterday during a conversation, your written financial policies for the general fund say that we should have 24% of expenditures in reserves. Your unwritten comfort level that you talk a lot about is 30%. Based on financial performance, both revenue and expenditure, unaudited FY21 is looking like we will finish FY21 with a little over 50% in reserves. When you have so that means there's a little over there'll be over $20 million in reserves. I've looked at revenues and expenditure patterns, and Mr. Salzer, I am comfortable. This is at the very top end of my comfort level. If I thought we could afford more, I actually would have recommended more.
Anything else, Phil? The only other comment I'd say, since you brought it up, was the fact that the responsibility that we had as our community, we felt to the elderly of this community to have a net, safety net, within a period of time, which was basically 2 to 3 months, we were able to find places for everybody within the community. So I think there was more beds than were really required in the community.
I still would have loved to have taken the vote to the people, but when I was told that we still couldn't ask them for an amount beyond 10 cents, and that we would not even break even with the 10 cents, then I gave up, my wanting to keep Headington Oaks open for us. I did not know there was a law that restricted us from going past 10 cents, and I knew once we couldn't do that it was impossible.
Well, you certainly had your heart and soul in that place. You were there every day it was being built, so we appreciate that too. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just, Mr. Chairman, just a lighthearted note. I've now taken Methodist team members through the building. At least we're approaching 10 times, and everyone is very keen on keeping the ice cream parlor.
Okay. I see no other hands to speak. Please vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Miscellaneous. Does anyone have any miscellaneous to bring up today? Seeing no hands, we will adjourn and turn it over to Mr. Rand for executive session. Thank you.